Hello, I'm Richard Pharro. In 1994, after a career in civil engineering and a growing interest in project management, when I served on the board of IPMA and the council of APM, I established APM Group. We started with a little-known project management methodology in the UK. The training community welcomed our approach, and APMG was born and hasn't looked back since. Over the years, I've been inspired by organisations, leaders, communities and individuals, and I'm always keen to have a coffee, or sometimes a little bit stronger, and a chat with those that really make a difference. Please get comfortable and join in my conversation with some of the biggest influencers in our market. I'm here today with Melanie Franklin, who I've known probably for about 2 decades now. And Melanie has built a career as an author, a writer, a thinker in change management, and in particular as an agent provocateur. And when she's delivering her training programs and consulting programs around the world, you can always expect to see Melanie bring out the best in the people they're talking to. So I'm delighted to be able to catch up with Melanie while she's passing through London running the training program to talk about the world of change management. But before I say a few words and ask you a few questions, Melanie, how would you introduce yourself to our audience listening to you as an expert on change management?
I think that's probably the thing that I would say, is that I do invest a lot of time trying to make sure that I develop my expertise. What excites me about working in both the agile and the change space is that it is fast moving, and I don't think any of us have got the answers. I don't think it's simplistic. I don't think there's a silver bullet that says if we do X, we definitely get Y. And I think that we're continually learning from our colleagues in neuroscience and behavioural economics. The schools of positive psychology are giving us great insight into how perhaps we can help people adopt and develop new ways of working. And so you have to keep building your skills. So
for someone from an engineering background, that sounds particularly scary, that we're bringing in those new sciences and those softer skills. So how does that fit into this world at the moment where people talk about either change or transformational change? So how would you differentiate between transformation and normal organisational change, or is there a difference?
I think transformation is a great label to put on the scale of the difference that an organisation wants to make. I think it's the label that indicates that perhaps this is going to be perhaps organisation-wide or really very thought-provoking. But I think that describes the what. I think change management is very much about the techniques that you would have to use to achieve that kind of activity. Change management, really simply, is all the activities that we use to make people aware that they need to do things differently, to persuade them to do things differently, to encourage them and motivate them, and help them practice and experiment, perhaps pick themselves up after they've made mistakes, because when you're trying something for the first time, it's never going to go smoothly first time round. So there is this idea of resilience in there. How do we develop that? And then helping them bed it down afterwards as the new norm.
And does that vary between industry? Is there much difference between industry? And probably the bigger question, because it's always a hot topic these days, between culture. Can any organisation transform? Can any people in any culture transform? What would you draw out? Are there any differences? Because often from an outside you assume there must be, but for someone on the inside, are there?
I don't think that there are differences by industry or by culture, because at the heart of everything we're doing in change is it's a human being who's being asked to stop doing something that's probably a well-worn routine. It's a known habit. And they're being asked to stop doing that, to forget doing that, and to actually learn skills and practice new routines that become the new norm. And it's all about the human condition. I don't think it matters whether or not I'm working in the Middle East or in North Africa or in Europe or North America. It doesn't seem to matter. It's all about how people experience the loss of skills, the fear that they've got to learn something new, and then the excitement when it starts to become, oh, I've got this, I know what I'm doing. And so I don't think it matters if you're training somebody who is in a global healthcare company that perhaps is looking at how hospitals run better, or whether or not you're working at an oil refinery or an airport that's got to put more passengers through, or those who are going to design a new car. It all seems to be the same because it's the human condition.
So how do you help people over that? If it's about getting people to buy into it, no matter where they are in the organisation, and we're all resistant to change, particularly when it's done to us. So, what would be your top tip to enable people to accept that it is likely to be for the better, and at the end of the day, we all have to change, otherwise we're in a very, very bad place? What's your top tip for the individual that's being changed?
I think if you want to help people overcome the fear factor, perhaps what we don't do enough of is when we talk about change, we don't remind people of all the things that are going to remain the same. But when you start to talk about the things that remain the same, that's very calming, because those are the things they already know how to do. Too often we talk about the next new thing as if it's the only thing that anybody's interested in. But if you can put it back into the context of other things that they're already doing and that will remain the same, then it enables people to perhaps take a little bit of the fear out and to realise that this is doable. But at the same time, I would challenge your statement about the change is good for us eventually, the longer term. Because I'm certainly working with lots of organisations who have a common experience. They are taking out, from a system perspective, an awful lot of local systems, sometimes called legacy or current systems, and they're replacing them with one unified platform across the whole organisation. And actually what I'm managing is a lot of loss, because people are losing systems that they've tweaked over the years to meet their local practices. They've got lots of little bits and pieces that really help them get the job done as fast as possible. And when we rip all of that away and we're actually implementing, everybody's on the same platform, so organisationally that's a great thing, but individually there's loss because their job takes longer. There's more manual processes temporarily until once we've got everybody on the same platform, we can then start adding more and more functionality. And this week alone, I've been dealing with an organisation that's going to experience that loss over the next 14 months before we even get to a point where we're starting to add in new features and they can really start to get the benefit. So we have to think about how that's not very motivating. To basically be told that you're going on a diet where you can't eat any of your favourite foods for 14 months doesn't sound like something you want to do. So what we're doing is we're putting together a team that will, every month, start to look at some things that would improve the condition, that can add a few extra tweaks. So we're carving out a little bit of the effort just to create some of that motivation and keep people inspired. We're basically saying that they can have a bar of chocolate every few weeks and we'll make it a bit better.
So on that basis, how much change do you think someone can accommodate and be happy? So if the transformation is incremental, how big a bar of chocolate can I eat at any one time?
I think that many organisations are now realising that we talk about change management sometimes as a mental health aid, because we're getting to a point where people are so stressed by the fact that nothing feels certain, nothing feels ordinary, because every day they come in and they find that they're being asked to stop doing one thing, start doing something else, use a new system, work in a new place, work with somebody else, or learn the concepts of a new product or service, that they're on shifting sands all of the time. And I think one of the most important things we can do in the wider sense of leading a transformation is to keep the idea of a cohesive picture. How do you knit together all of the individual changes that you're asking people to make so that it feels like it's actually an evolving picture, and they can see that what they were doing last week actually has supported what they're being able to do this week and the coming weeks, that there is actually a flow to what they're being asked to do. If we fail to do that, then it appears to those who are experiencing high volumes of change that they're constantly being asked to go off at a tangent, left, right and centre. And that constant level of disturbance makes it incredibly difficult for them to feel any sense of certainty over what they're doing.
Many years ago, I can remember people talking about the concept of islands of stability, where there will be a piece of change then there will be a rest period, and then you would start again. Is that concept still around?
I don't think it is. I think many organisations would say that the problem we have is that period of stability where we've put a huge amount of effort into making a lot of changes, and we may even have come up with names for the change programme, like one of the planets or one of the seas. And then for the 18 months, everybody was focused on it. And then we've got to a new plateau and we can have a break for the next 6-9 months. That's gone. Now what we have in this more agile world is we have waves of incremental change where we might be putting in small scale changes every few weeks, every couple of months, but it is an unrelenting pace of change. So that opportunity to get to a plateau where everybody could get their breath back and everybody could bed down what they were doing as actually a new habit and absolutely routine, now that's gone. The high volumes of change that we're experiencing means that the life cycle of a change, I can't put something in and say, and we won't touch that again for another 3 years. That's not the truth. There's a very good chance that 6 months from now, I'm going to go back and tweak it, or in fact remove it and replace it with something else.
You used Agile a couple of times. Do you see the concept of Agile thinking, Agile organisations, Agile enterprises or whatever, being inherently necessary for delivering this corporate change, this organisational change, this transformational change? Or do you think somebody could do a transformational change without thinking Agile?
I had somebody with me this week who absolutely realised for the first time that Agile was probably the most common sense thing that he'd heard in a long time. Because what he realised was that his take on Agile, and everybody has a slightly different take, was a recognition that it's incremental delivery of change, that he doesn't have to plan everything up front in detail. He can do a little bit, experiment, understand what the feedback is from that, and then adjust what he's going to do next off the back of that feedback. And he thought that that was the most common sense thing he'd heard in a long time, because he said, it's the truth. There are so many disruptors that I can't even dream of now, he said, that makes it impossible for me to plan in detail all the things that need to change. I need something that helps me make a little bit of progress, but not overpromise. To actually make a difference and then ask myself, and what would be the most sensible next piece of difference? What would be the most valuable thing I could do next? So I think Agile, and it's been around for several decades, but I think it's having its moment in the sun because people have realised that there are so many changes now that actually the volume of those changes means that there's a shorter lifespan, which increases the volume of changes, which means that people have to edge towards things far more.
But if that is the case, if organisations and the leadership of organisations were very open, honest and transparent and said, we don't really know all the detail, we got to do this incrementally, we're going to do it in an agile way. So if the individual then knew that they were being subjected, my word, to a little bit of change, a bite-sized piece of change, and then there will be another bite-sized piece of change, do you think that would ease some of the fear factors that people have? Do you think it would increase the fear factors, or do you think it wouldn't make any difference?
I think if you're going to set up an agile approach, the most successful organisations are very good at saying, there is a bigger picture here. We're not just going to go off at tangent left, right and centre. We've got a bigger idea further down the line. Over the horizon, we want to be these things. But what they're describing is not a detailed vision statement of exactly what it is they're going to create. What they're setting out is the values and the priorities and the principles that they want to hold to. So that gives them an idea, a sort of a destination that we can head towards, but enough freedom to ask constantly the question, and how might we best deliver that? And it's in the how that I think you've got the shorter term changes. Because if a piece of new technology comes in that immediately simplifies or automates something, let's put that in place. That would be fantastic. But that might not be the bigger picture. What we want to do is keep an eye on where are we heading, what's the value we want to create. And I think it's the combination of short-term, multiple waves of change But if it's set in the context of that bigger picture, that values-driven picture, that benefits-driven picture, where people say, these are the good things that we're going to get out of making all these changes, then people have a reason, they have a rationale, and that is quite inspiring, because people can think, I take a lot of disruption on in my day, every day, but there's a reason for it. I can see where we're heading.
And do you find that people accept that benefits, that vision, that objective that people are driving towards is also going to change as the market around them changes? Because you might have that vision for whatever period of time, but then you realise you need to change that vision, you need to extend that vision. Is that common in the clients you work with, about the vision was the vision a month or 2 months ago, but now we've got to refine the vision? Yes,
I think that you can say that that bigger picture also evolves, but it does evolve at a much slower pace because it's much further over the horizon. And I think that people aren't stupid. They recognise that there are lots of things changing in the world all of the time. And that constantly you can look at models like the PESTLE model and look at the political and the economic, the social, the technological, even the legislative, environmental and ethical perspectives are all subject to change. So it's about a willingness to do perhaps short-term, frequent changes that are about how we do things, but also keep on the table that we still relatively regularly evaluate what that bigger dream is over the horizon, but not as frequently.
Melanie, as always, it's great catching up with you. Before we finish, what do you think might be the major change to change management in the next 12 months?
I think that a lot of the theories and models that we have are incredibly helpful at laying out that path where we look at a change and we say, how do we inspire people? We make them aware of the change, we help them understand the impact of the change, we motivate them to make that change and then bed it down. But I don't think that our profession yet has got enough emphasis on how to cope with multiple, never-ending change. And I think maybe that's the area that we're going to explore. But I also think that that's for us as a profession. Within my clients, I think that possibly the thing we need to develop the most is being able to explain the value of what change management achieves. Because until we can get a good conversation going about the fact that managing change in a professional way is actually delivering value for the business, reducing disruption, getting us to increase revenues earlier, until we start talking about change management in terms of those business priorities, then I don't think we're going to get enough support for doing all the things we've yet to do.
I sense we could continue to talk about this for hours, but I think we're going to have to finish it there because I know you've got a plane to catch. So thanks for finding the time to have a chat and good luck.
Thank you.